Kelly.
Well, yeah, I know this one. I'm involved in the Jazz Fest. You know, we're getting big. We've hit the sweet spot. Jazz Fest is successful. I call it our best population incubator we have going right now, maybe except for Randy's Escape the City contest, which is pretty good. Anyways, what are we going to do about that? Well, we've done a lot of things. We've increased security. I just met with, the council and I just met with RCMP in Whistler, head of RCMP, realized that a festival itself, a non-for-profit, can hire specific RCMP outside of our own RCMP budget to help enforce some of the bylaws in our town, which is maybe an option. We're bringing in more toilets. We're creating a bigger footprint on the festival site. We're moving all the staff and offices up to the higher level campground, so there's going to be more space. I don't think it's going to get much bigger than it was last year. We sold 2,600 tickets. That's probably about what it's going to go at, and we'll figure out other ways to increase revenue if need be.
Thank you, Kelly. Somebody else wants to speak to that. Susan.
Kelly addressed pretty much everything, but what I was going to say is council would continue to work with the Jazz Society to address some of the concerns that the community had last year regarding camping and parking, and you know, generally the number of people that we had. You know, it's good for the business community for the most part, and we need to continue to build on that. Making it a good relationship so that the festival does not fold, because that would be very detrimental to our community as a whole. Sure, we're inconvenienced for a weekend, but I think that we need the festival.
Thank you, Susan. Let's go to Andy and then we'll go to Pat. I will say, just as an observer about a third of the way through, if this was a hockey game, we haven't even seen a puck battle yet. If you guys want to disagree on something, please disagree on it. Don't feel you need to agree with the person before. So, Andy, and then
I know council has met with the Jazz Fest. One of the important criteria is to make sure that we don't have people camping all over the community during Jazz Fest that happen inside designated camping areas. Because I understand there were sanitary problems this year that need to be dealt with, and I've talked to people who live along the beach who found that a really offensive problem. My solution is we open up the arena and make it a temporary hostel during the Jazz Fest period and encourage our youth who maybe can't afford $30 a night to go and stay there. We have to do something.
let's hand it to the hockey bridge from me to him with the arena.
I would just say keep it the size it is now and manage it properly.
Very good. Jeffrey, last word on the Jazz Fest question.
So far it seems like the Jazz Fest has been covered pretty good here. One thing I'd just like to add is I was actually asked about what we could do about the bathrooms, because there's not enough bathrooms for all the people who are attending. And what I kind of think about that one is we're providing the setting and we are helping in a lot of ways for the Jazz Fest to run. It benefits both of us. So they're making a pretty good profit. I think as far as the bathrooms go, there are some issues that are entirely up to them to deal with. We need to talk to them, and they need to be able to have enough bathrooms for all the people showing up at their event.
Very good, thank you. Would somebody like to step to the mic? And remember, you can pass me a question if you want to write it down.
Hi, I'm Donna Grace Campbell, and I address this to the three mayoral candidates and or anyone else who'd like to answer. Last week, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is a consortium of scientists worldwide, called climate change a crisis of dire proportions. So dire that last night, the House of Commons had an emergency meeting and discussed it until midnight. Michelle McGall yesterday, even in her town hall meeting, brought it up. So I'm wondering what the role of the municipalities are in general, and what the village in particular can do to reduce greenhouse gas emissions.
Thank you. And those are directed to the mayoral candidates first. Why don't we start with Susan and just work our way through?
Well, the Village of Kaslo was one of the early signatories to the BC Climate Charter, and we receive money through a CARET grant every year, and those funds go towards green initiatives, and we've been working towards that. We've tried to convince the crew that it would be a good idea to drive an electric vehicle. So far, no luck, just because it doesn't have the capacity. But with the village and with us having Fortis electricity, there aren't a lot of options for us to become carbon neutral, but we're very close when we look at our reporting. So I think we need to keep working on it for sure. As far as the exact steps that we would need to take, you know, the energy generation through our water system is a good idea. We did have the proposal that was brought forward by Steve Anderson and Don Scarlett again, and we've invited them to bring that proposal back and update it so that we could perhaps look at doing that when we did the brake tank work, which had to go ahead. We left the option open that we could pursue that work at a later date if they brought that forward again.
Thank you, Susan. Pat?
Thank you. Other than federal provincial initiatives, you know, dictating to the municipality, to me, the most efficient way of the municipality would be to deal with the village crew. And I have faith in them that they know how to operate efficiently. But when I was in Mexico, I remember seeing a street sweeper. He had this can with 2 wheels and a broom and a rake. And I'm thinking that might be good for the climate.
Thank you, Pat. Andy?
Okay, when I was on the regional district, we set clear hard targets for reduction in carbon emissions and managed a 12% reduction. So we need to have a conversation as a community how we can do that. This village has signed a charter with regard to growing local food. We need to implement that further. We need to think about changing out the Zamboni even for an electric one instead of a diesel one. We need to think about processing our own septic waste in this community instead of driving it down to Castleville. We need to think about taking all the organic waste out of our garbage and recycling it here instead of transporting it down to Castleville. That's how we begin to lower the carbon footprint by making ourselves more and more self-sufficient. And we can do it. There's a lot of innovations we've done in this community. We have to get our heads together and figure out how to do it.
Thank you, Andy. Are there candidates for council who would like to jump in on that one? I see a few people. Why don't we start here with Kelly, and then we'll move down to the other end of the table.
Yeah, I'll just add a couple of things. This council has lobbied the Ministry of Energy and Mines recently for LED lighting. That's been successful. Fortis is now replacing all of our lights, high pressure sodium with LED, which will cut our power consumption quite a lot. Some of the other projects, and Shadrach mentioned microhydro, we're in the works. It's all new, working with Fortis and the provincial government to try to change the legislation around how we can meter microhydro power. So eventually we should be able to throw that into our grid to offset our power consumption for the village. So those are a couple of things anyways.
Thank you, Kelly. Molly?
Well, I think this is where we could really involve the youth, because, I mean, when I was on council previously, there were a couple of high school students that came to the council with a recycling project, I think. And so there have been other things. I think it's a good opportunity for council to encourage the school to start doing some of those things, and I know that they already do. So, and, you know, there's incentives that we could offer people, like the wood stove incentive, those kind of things, that we could continue to support, our own bylaws that we support by not allowing livestock in the community, those kind of things. So,
Thank you. Henry?
Just a small thing to add. We also have electric chargers for vehicle. We have a Tesla is at the hotel, I think, and then there's a flow on Water Street, and Fortis is coming up with another charger, a fast charger. So this is something that to promote the electric cars, so maybe residents could invest that in Hong Kong.
Last word to Rob.
Okay, just a couple things that probably everybody's aware of. The two municipal buildings, the Kemble Building, Village Hall, are on geothermal. The Village Hall system works quite well. The one at the Kemble, not so great. We still rely on some propane in the coldest parts of the winter, but there's efforts being made, and the organic diversion concept is a good one, and it's being explored at the regional district level. I don't think it's going to be too long before you see it in Kaslo.
Thank you. Any other questions from the floor? From the live stream. Wow. This question is from the live stream. My question to each candidate, they didn't hear my rules apparently. The CTQ Lands Project has recommended that the village develop an area plan for the lands south of the river. This sounds like a great idea, but it may serve to delay development of part of the area for a